village's intent is to prevent structures like this from being erected random around the village when we can combine them with existing structures. That's the advantage of using the Commonwealth Edison Tower. You already have a very tall tower there.
Correct.
They are adding a minimal amount of equipment to the tower and a minimal amount of equipment on the ground next to the tower, and only one customer is allowed on the tower. If 800 feet up or down the right of way, somebody else wanted to go in, we would hold another hearing like this. The people in that area would have a chance to make an expression of their concerns, if any, and we would take a look at it. Now, the towers need to be put someplace. We try to minimize the number of different structures that go up, because if they had to put a separate structure in, now we start cluttering up the village with towers. We have some of them in industrial areas where they're freestanding. We also have a number of facilities like this on top of things like the village water towers. And we put them there to avoid adding clutter in other places. Anybody who wants to give testimony before this planning commission on any subject for which there is a hearing, I need to swear you in at this time. That includes the petitioner. So anyone that's going to want to speak on the subject of the T-Mobile application for a special permit for a tower on a Commonwealth Edison transmission tower, need you to stand up at this time. Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you give before this planning commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good. Okay. First item of business, public hearing. We have a request from T-Mobile for a special use permit and zoning variations, which makes it 2 hearings in one. To put a cell phone tower, I believe that's what you're planning on doing, essentially up the middle of a Commonwealth Edison Company transmission tower located in a residential district. The use of the transmission tower in the district is a permitted use, but the cell phone tower becomes a special use because it's not a public utility in the common sense of the word. I believe that's correct. And so we need to give them, assuming that we are in favor of it, special use permit to do that and find out what variations they might need to accomplish it. That pretty much sum it up, John?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So, who is here to represent the petitioner?
My name is Ray Schinkel,
This second, Ray.
S-H-I-N-K-L-E.
I-N-K-L-E. Thank you.
Sure. I'm with Insight, and I am representing T-Mobile this evening.
What company are you in?
T-Mobile, my company is Insight, I-N-S-I-T-E.
Okay. And you're rep for T-Mobile.
Correct. And as you stated, we are here seeking a height variance and a special use to co-locate a wireless antenna facility on the existing ComEd utility tower. So I'd like to, I know you're probably, most of you are familiar with these type of applications or sites, but I want to talk a little bit about T-Mobile, their site selection process, how they came to select this site, and then we can get into the specifics of the design, and I can answer any questions that you have. But to start, I think that we can all agree that wireless communication has really become part of our lifestyle. I'd be willing to bet that majority, if not all of you, and the people in this room have a wireless phone, or even multiple wireless devices like a tablet or an iPad. The subscriber base has grown tremendously over the last several years. People aren't just using these devices for traditional phone calls either. They're using it to access the internet, to email, text, and to stream videos. They're using these services where they work, where they play, where they commute, and most importantly, where they live. More and more people are cutting their landline and just using their only source of communication as their wireless phone. So the subscriber base is growing, the usage is growing tremendously. That has a big impact on the health and safety of the public, because their only source of communication with 911 is their wireless phone. Over 70% of 911 calls are made from wireless phones. Parents who are buying phones for their children, it's like the main reason they're doing it is for their health and safety of their children, so they can be reached. And the same thing with their elderly. So it's very important for T-Mobile and all the carriers to be able to provide seamless wireless coverage in order to keep up with this demand. T-Mobile is a nationwide carrier, one of 4 nationwide carriers across the country. They have millions of subscribers, and they've had their system up and running, their network up and running in Chicago since 1999. But they're constantly trying to make improvements to their network. They're working with their sales and marketing team to see where customer complaints or demands are coming from, and they're working closely with their radio frequency engineers to see where there's spotty coverage that is either resulting in dropped calls or could be resulting in dropped calls in the near future. They're trying to stay ahead of that demand and make sure that they provide that seamless coverage to their customer base. This is an existing radio frequency map. And you can see behind you, you have these triangles with numbers next to them called CH. Those are all existing sites that are on air. The 2 sites, the triangle in the middle, right near Round Lake Beach, represents the coverage objective where they're trying to improve the coverage. The green represents excellent coverage, for not only vehicular and street level, but also they have a very high degree of confidence that you can make in-building calls. When we say in-building is, I'm sure you've all had those situations you're trying to make a phone call and you're outside, it's great, but when you go into your basement or you go in a house, it's just not as good. All the carriers are trying to make sure that that is seamless coverage inside your home or inside your office. So the objective is to fill out that white area that's around that triangle where they have a lot of users or are expecting a lot of subscribers. The 2 sites that are on either side of that end in 123 and 493, those are both co-locations on water tanks that are owned by the village. Just to give you an idea of where everything is. So this coverage area drops right on where this ComEd line runs right through this coverage area that they're trying to cover. Now, when they determine that a site is needed, they give it to someone like myself, and it is our job to go out and find something that's existing. T-Mobile is not in the tower business. They don't want to build towers, they don't want to own them. They want to build a wireless network as fast as possible. So their objective is to co-locate on existing structures. That's towers, rooftops, water tanks, steeples, smokestacks, even utility towers. They just need to meet some 3 criteria. One is, does it fall in the area where they need to cover? And does it provide the height where they need to cover? Imagine you're installing a sprinkler system in your front yard and you have a dead spot in your yard. You need to provide that sprinkler right where that dead spot is. If you go too far away, you're going to a sprinkler where you already have coverage. Or if you go too far away, you still have that dead spot. The second one is, does it pass the structural analysis? Can we place our antenna facilities on the structure without it falling over? And thirdly, whoever owns the structure, are they willing to lease to us? Not only is it in T-Mobile's best interest to co-locate, but it is part of the majority, if not all, of zoning codes is to exhaust existing structures wherever possible. Nobody wants new towers in the community. I put up a section from your zoning code where it not only stresses co-location, but it stresses co-location on utility towers, which is what we're here for tonight. This is number 3, attached to or otherwise similarly closely integrated with tall structures established for public utility purposes in any zoning district. That's exactly what we're here for tonight. Here is an existing structure, here's an existing co-location, which is exactly what we're proposing tonight. That's over in Mundelein. You can see the monopole or the pole designed through the existing lattice tower with the shelter that's at the base. These exist all over the Chicagoland area. You probably don't even notice them, but there's tons of them. Again, this is a view of the candidate that we're here for tonight. Here's another view of it. And the best way to show what we're proposing is the photo simulations that we prepared. So the first view is facing southwest. And you can see this is the site as it exists today, with the bike path to the left. This is what we're proposing. So we have a paved access road with a shelter, the masonry shelter with the landscaping of arborvitae on either side, along with a 6-foot fence. And then you have the monopole going through the lattice tower. I can tell you that people get confused with it being a tower. That monopole cannot exist without being co-located to the utility tower. They have to, it's too thin and the foundation is not deep enough. The reason why they put the monopole through there is they need to be a certain height above the utility lines for the ComEd safety, for them to work on the lines. This is a view facing northeast, is existing today, and it shows what we're proposing. Here's a view of the drawing. You can see the long access road that they'll be putting a culvert up off of Round Lake Drive, and then you see the landscaping, and then you have the fiber coming from the south side, and the power coming from a transformer on the northwest side. This is a close-up of that monopole design, or a bird's eye view, with the shelter at the base. And that's the proposed landscaping. We're working closely with John on that, but we're open to any suggestions that you may have. This is a view of the monopole, and you can see the height of the lattice tower. That's at 98 feet. And then the top of our antennas with the lightning rod will be at 110. But we'll have 6 panel antennas up on the top there. And just another view of the landscape plan. This is a view of the shelter. Normally T-Mobile prefers outdoor cabinets that are on a cement slab. They don't like building expensive shelters, but we're doing it to meet the aesthetic demand. And this is a view of the map with the site, and it fills in the coverage gap very nicely. They would not be doing this. I can tell you that ComEds, from a Canada perspective, are the last resort for the carriers. They don't like them. They're very expensive to build and extremely expensive to maintain. Anytime they want to upgrade an antenna or line, they have to pay 4 times the amount of a normal construction cost, because they have to use a specific contractor that is licensed to work on ComEd towers. So it is a last resort. The only reason they're entertaining it is because it's in harmony with their code and it's an existing structure. And just to wrap up, as I said before, these type of facilities exist all across the Chicagoland area. These are just some of the suburbs that are similar to Round Lake Beach, where they have these type of co-locations right in residential areas. They're part of the visual landscape, and it's a great way to meet the coverage objective. And it's with harmony of code, so it's really a win-win situation. And that is it. So I appreciate your time. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
How much additional height are you going to require over the tower?
It's just, I think it's at 98, so we're basically 10 feet above it. The top of it is 110. So our antennas are at 108, so we're only going 12 feet above that, but it's only because of the lightning rod, really.
Is there an interruption of power service during the installation of the new pole?
They will, a lot of the times these guys will do it when the lines are hot, which is crazy to me.
It's
But sometimes it all depends on, each service is different, and the ComEd works with a company called MJ Electric, and we have to schedule it 12 weeks out, and they have to make sure that everything is straight, and sometimes they do, but it's not like people are out of service. They just have to, they have a very tight schedule when they build it. So I can get an answer for you if they really shut it down, but I know it's not like people are out of power.
They won't be shutting down the
I think they might turn it down.
They temporarily reroute their transmission tower.
That would make sense.
I used to work for those people.
Oh, okay, there you go. Chairman Bailey knows more than I do with that, looks like.
I need to dot an I and cross a T. John, looking through the packet, I did not see a copy of the notice of publication.
It is in the packet. We do have the newspaper notice of publication and verification. We also have the applicant's affidavits of the sign posting and the registered mailings that were sent out to surrounding property owners.
Can you tell me where in the packet it was so I know how I missed it?
I may have missed it. Let's see here. Yes, I have a hard copy with a publication date of November 12th, 2015.
Because I see the generic copy of the notification, and I see a blank form. I see the affidavit of notice of mailing and sign posting, the blank form for it, but I don't see a signed affidavit of publication.
We do have the certificate. I can.
You've got the certificate, that's all I need to know. The only reason I asked was I didn't see it in the download packet. You might check and see what got put in.
Okay.
If I missed it, I apologize. Okay, anyone here questions for petitioner? Jeremiah,
Yes, sir.
tell us about it.
Okay. As the petitioner pointed out, what's contemplated is a request for a special use, which is listed under Article 18 of your zoning ordinance, where in any zoning district where an existing tall structure is, a petitioner can come to the village and ask to add cellular and service antennas onto that tall structure, but it has to be an existing tall structure, and it can go into any district. In addition to that, the Article 18 contemplates allowing certain departures and variations to use those structures with respect to the standards. So it's understood that it's the village's benefit to use these existing tall structures, and to that end, allow certain variations since they're already existing with respect to the built environment surrounding them. For this particular petition, there are three potential variations that you will wish to consider. One is a variation for height from 110 feet requested versus the 30 feet maximum in the R3 district, which is the district that this property is in. The minimum setback from a residential district on all sides. Since this is in the residential district, it has a 0-foot setback, whereas typically towers are required to have a 400-foot setback from all residential districts. But once again, this is an existing tall structure, and that's contemplated that can be considered a departure since you're reusing that structure that already exists. And then finally, a minimum setback from a right-of-way, and this is north towards Hawthorne Drive right-of-way from 164 feet required versus the 200 feet setback minimum. Once again, that also relates to the fact that the tower is existing in with respect to that driveway or that right-of-way, so that's part of the consideration. The property is pretty much on all sides surrounded by residential uses and park and open space with respect to the bike path underneath the ComEd transmission line. The petitioner did list some information with respect to co-location and the fact that they're already using the closest two tower sites. Typically, the ordinance kind of desires that whenever a new tower is being built, additional facilities be located or spaces be provided for additional co-location from other providers. ComEd provided a letter in their application that said that they only allow one per tower, one service provider per tower. The only thing we'd ask the petitioner is, does this limit any other providers from finding locations in the area for their own service? So other than T-Mobile, the other three national services we're looking, do you think there'd be ample sites, you being in the site location business, to meet their demands beyond this?
So that is correct. T-Mobile will not allow multiple carriers on one tower. They will only allow one per tower. But I know a lot of sites where you'll have multiple carriers on a stretch of towers. You'll have 3 towers where each one will take up those towers. So the other towers that are in that area are available for ComEd. So they would just have to use one of those towers if it's filled their needs.
Petitioner also provided propagation maps that you saw earlier with the green colors and the non-green colors and how the service will be expanded. There's also information from a radio frequency engineer that's open for you to read and digest. If you have some questions, you can direct us to the petitioner on one of those meetings. Are you presently going through the FCC process, or will that be something you do after you receive approval from the village?
It'll be something we do after, yeah.
In the FAA, have you?
We started the air study, and our preliminary feedback is that it's well below the FAA standards. There won't be any lighting or even an FAA review needed. It's a third-party air study that we do.
The landscaping plan we found sufficient with respect to the standards listed in the ordinance to screen the equipment shelter and the facilities and the fencing on the bottom. Petitioner just mentioned no tower lighting will be involved. Will there be any lighting on the equipment shed at all, exterior lighting?
No. If anything, I think they have a light when the security, when the technician goes up, it'll just light it by the door, but there won't be any lighting there.
Okay. And signage, we noted there was some small site information signage that looks like maybe goes on the fence. Is that correct, or does it go outside of the fence? Or
In front of the fence or the front, yeah, right at the gate.
is there any additional signage?
No.
Okay. We've also provided you with a list of all the standards from Article 18. For the most part, when it comes to these towers, you're looking for the petitioner approved that they meet the standards to your satisfaction and ultimately to the village board's satisfaction. There's a lot of technical information, but when you're looking at those, it's really at the co-location. Is this the appropriate site? Does it meet the demands to expand service? Are the residents of the village benefited by adding this extra tower, by adding the ability to gain more service? So that's kind of the questions you would want to direct to the petitioner.
One other question. Do we have or will we receive a copy of Commonwealth Edison's easement agreement to allow them to have the tower, the structure, and the road on Commonwealth Edison's right of way?
We've already provided. It's a
Okay, we
fully,
have that on hand already.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a letter submitted that stated that they were allowing the tower, and I believe they did submit plats and easements with respect to that. So.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, anyone, any questions for Jeremiah?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Jeremiah, when you, just for my own clarification, unless I heard wrong, when you asked the petitioner regarding the single provider on the tower being limited by ComEd, and your answer was the limit was by T-Mobile, not ComEd, is that correct?
no, it's by ComEd.
By ComEd?
Sorry about that, yes.
Okay.
It may be by both, but ComEd's limiting it in any event. Am I correct that if somebody else had been on this tower, you could have used either of the adjacent towers for the same function?
Correct. We couldn't, if someone was already
If the tower had
covered,
been previously used, you
we
had
could
an
not use
alternate.
it, but we could go to one of the adjacent towers and put in an application. ComEd could either accept or reject it.
Yeah, but it would have given you the coverage you needed from any of those three towers.
Oh, I can't answer that. I mean, it's 800 feet in either direction. I don't think it would have been ideal, but they probably would have been able to make it work. But, I'm not the RF engineer. I can't say for certain.
No, I understand that. It's just a matter of the existence of your facility on this tower doesn't prevent other people from being on the adjacent towers. And if their layout gives them similar holes, they should be able to make adequate coverage from each of the alternate towers.
Correct.
That's the big issue. We don't want a situation where we end up blocking a carrier for something like this. Unless there just literally is not space for it. And then that becomes the carrier's problem.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Burge, get your question answered? Any others? Anybody else?
I do have one more question, I'm sorry, just regarding the access path. And forgive me for not knowing the layout of the landscape over there. Are there curbs along Round Lake Beach?
I drove the other day and I didn't see one. So, yeah, I don't think there's a curb on that.
There are not in that location? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay.
And lastly, I'm sorry, is there any sound being emitted from the
The only sub will be like a normal air conditioner that you have in your home, because if they're in the shelter, you're gonna have to be climate controlled, so they'll have like a regular air conditioning unit. But it won't be any louder than
Like a standard.
a residential,
compressor.
yeah.
You know approximately the size of the unit?
Pardon?
You know the approximate size of the unit?
I don't, I mean, that's only a 10 by 20 building, so they don't need a very big, you know.
Because my experience with those has been that there's a typically 1 to 3 ton units, which is about the size of a reasonable household, whole house air conditioner. So you're talking about that level of noise. And there is landscaping as well, help cover it up. Anything else, Chris? No, no problem. You're supposed to have questions, sir. Anybody else?